From advertising to software as a service to data.
Across all of our programs and clients, we've seen a 55 to 65% open rate.
Getting brands authentically integrated into content performs better than TV advertising.
Typical lifespan of an article is about 24 to 36 hours.
If we're reaching out to the right person with the right message and a clear call to action, then it's just a matter of timing.
Welcome to the MarTech Podcast, and I Hear Everything production. In this podcast, you'll hear the stories of world-class marketers that use technology to drive business results and achieve career success. We'll unearth the real-world experiences of some of the brightest minds in the marketing and technology space so you can learn the tools, tips, and tricks they've learned along the way. Now here's the host of the MarTech Podcast, Benjamin Shapiro.
Welcome to the MarTech Podcast. I'm your host, Benjamin Shapiro, and today we're going to discuss how AI is transforming creative industries. Joining us is Yaniv Makover, who is the CEO of Anyword, which is a data-driven artificial intelligence copywriting solution used by brands like Ted Baker, Condé Nast, and Equinox. The Anyword tool allows marketers to instantly create unique and engaging copy that converts and drives sales. Trained on billions of marketing data sets, over 250 million pieces of top-performing ad copy, Anyword offers marketers powerful predictive performance scoring and analytics to ensure the content will engage their target audience and achieve the desired results. Yesterday, Yaniv and I talked about leveraging artificial intelligence without losing creativity, and today we're going to continue the conversation talking about where artificial intelligence is most effective in marketing. All right, here's the second part of my conversation with Yaniv Makover, the CEO of Anyword. Yaniv, welcome back to the MarTech Podcast.
Thank you, Ben.
Excited to have you back. And boy, I mentioned yesterday, you're in the eye of the storm, and I'm thrilled to continue our conversation. For anybody who wasn't listening, we talked about creating content, but not losing creativity. How do you train artificial intelligence, your large language model, to produce high-performing content? Maybe we buried the lead a little bit yesterday. What I want to talk to you today about is how do we use artificial intelligence to be more effective in marketing? Is it all content production? Are we evaluating performance? What are the ways that marketers are actually using AI to improve their marketing efforts?
So AI specifically, or generative AI, it's like, what are you referring to? So AI is like a broader topic and you can use it everywhere.
I mean, generative AI and the ChatGPT, large language models, artificial intelligence, that sort of new wave of third generation AI.
AI has been like everywhere. We've all been using it. Generative AI has actually erupted in the scene in November with ChatGPT last November, but it's been around, or at least language models, or a bit smaller, have been around for a few years now. I think there's a bunch of obvious use cases. The first one I'm not really sure people are aware of. Abstractive summarization is where you give a language model a corpus of text or a lot of emails or content, and you want it to summarize it for you in a meaningful way without just extracting like sentences of words. The ability of a model to do that is amazing. So if you had to spend all this time explaining to your market and your audiences like really complicated, high detail messages and narratives, you can basically use a model that's not even an expert. It's the first time it's seen that content. It will do a pretty good job of summarizing it. And then you can also use generative AI to tailor your message to every specific channel, format, audience. And I think that's something we'll all see around us for a lot of the kind of like marketing things. So obviously you can do your copy for ads, your emails, your website copy, blogs. So anything that used to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, the whole content creation bottleneck, I think, is now pretty much about to be solved. And now it's just quality, right? You want to be above the noise, and there's so much content coming at people that you have to figure out how you still have to do good marketing. You still have to stand out. You still have to talk to your audience the way and tell them what you're messaging the way they want to hear it.
What I'm hearing from you is that the content syndication, the proliferation of content, we've got this one message. We feel like it hits our audience where it should. And we want to take this message and put it in every channel. Great. Load it into AI and reformat and refactor the content. Wonderful. That to me is a distribution problem. It seems like there's an earlier challenge where artificial intelligence should be useful, and maybe it's not quite yet, which is how do you figure out who to target? What are the signals? How do you do your list building? Talk to me about how artificial intelligence can be used to figure out who to talk to, not necessarily what to say?
You would get a pretty good answer about who to target for a specific message. A pretty good answer is not an expert answer. So in the cases where you're looking for a language model like ChatGPT to give you answers that should be backed by data, then you should be cautious. For instance, if you ask ChatGPT, like, what are the keywords that you should be targeting for an article, I don't know, for SEO, it will come up with pretty good keywords, but it doesn't have the data. So it doesn't have the most searched keywords. It doesn't really know what keywords you should actually be targeting with your article. But you'll get some very smart keywords and things that sound good. And I think that's where people should be wary about using a language model to basically give you factual decisions, right? So it's not an expert, doesn't have the data, and you'll have a good head start for what possible audiences, what possible keywords, but you should do your research.
I feel like it's good for ideation, right? It's like, hey, I'm looking for people that want to start their own podcast and pay $10,000 to $20,000 a month. What are the type of businesses I should target? And you can get a list of ideas. It's not going to say, go talk to Yaniv. He's thinking about doing a podcast. Here's his contact information, right? It doesn't do the SDR type work, but it might help you with ideation for who you can reach out to. Then there's the content production, the content proliferation. To me, the missing pieces here are the actual publishing and then the evaluation. I think that the publishing is actually probably APIs, and that part can be automated. When you're creating a piece of content, you could probably automate and publish tweets using things like Zapier and whatever. So I want to focus more in on the evaluation of your marketing. This seems to be where Anyword's sweet spot really hits. You're giving people the evaluation of how their content will perform while they're writing their content. How can they validate how their content is actually performing after the fact to make sure that tools like Anyword are accurate, or if people aren't using Anyword, that their artificial intelligence driven marketing is actually helping grow their business?
So with Anyword, you can connect your ad accounts, your social accounts, your website, your email accounts back to Anyword. And then basically we, through APIs, ingest your performance for the different copies. So you have to ingest the data and then understand how copy performed for multiple instances. So if you had a copy across multiple emails or multiple ads, really assess if the copy worked or didn't. And then that gets fed back into the marketer and also back to the language model, right? So that didn't work. So you're basically getting better and better all the time. We also have, we put some, on your website, you have our JavaScript, and we will basically keep serving different copy to different users and keep optimizing endlessly. So if you have an engine that can create endless content, you're basically not bound to a human creating that content. You can keep optimizing. So for us, you start with a score or a prediction for your target demographic and your copy that's based off of Anyword's data. But then once you plug in your data and your historical performance, it will get better and more accurate. And so you start at a baseline of what we call 82% accuracy. Basically means if you give the model two types of texts for the same audience, same target, it'll guess which one will perform better 82% of the time. But if you connect your data, it will know your target audience and your product better and will get better in almost 87, 88%. And then as you kind of continue this loop, it will get better. There's an asymptote because only so far so accurate you can be. And also copy doesn't determine all of your marketing performance or just a part of it. But then that's how we can perfect the feedback loop. For us, the feedback loop is super important. If you're trying to solve just the writer's block saving time problem, then you can use any model. But if you're trying to create actual performance with Anyword, you'll see at the minimum 15 to 20% lift on the copy you wrote by yourself, either you or a language model, but you can also be higher than that.
Yeah, to me, that's the really interesting part is building that feedback loop. There's been tools around. I remember I worked for a company called Searchmetrics as a consultant for a while. They were bought by Conductor, and they had a tool where as you were writing, it would tell you the page score of what was going to happen. A really interesting product, and it was great for, hey, while my writers are going through, am I writing to rank content? And it would help you figure out what keywords you need to add, right? This sort of predictive analytics of how content will perform, while effective and doesn't have total market penetration, has been around for a little while. What's really interesting to me is understanding the nuances of your business and your customers and building that feedback loop to optimize specifically for the people that you are trying to reach. Seems like an incredibly powerful tool. I'm definitely going to be checking it out. So Yaniv, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and telling us a little bit about how marketers can use artificial intelligence and telling us about Anyword. Like I said, you're on the cutting edge, the tip of the spear when it comes to probably the biggest story of the year.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And that wraps up this episode of the Martech Podcast. Thanks for listening to my conversation with Yaniv Makover, the CEO of Anyword. If you'd like to get in touch with Yaniv, you can find a link to his LinkedIn profile in our show notes. You can contact him on Twitter. His handle is Yaniv Makover. That's YANIVMAKOVER. Or you can visit his company's website, which is anyword.com, ANYWORD.com. Just one more link in our show notes I'd like to tell you about. If you didn't have a chance to take notes while you were listening to this podcast, head over to martechpod.com, where we have summaries of all of our episodes and contact information for our guests. You can also subscribe to our weekly newsletter, and you can even send us your topic suggestions or your marketing questions, which we'll answer live on our show. Of course, you can always reach out on social media. Our handle is martechpod, MARTECHPOD, on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or you can contact me directly. My handle is Ben J. Shap, BENJSHAP. And if you haven't subscribed yet and you want a daily stream of marketing and technology knowledge in your podcast feed, we're going to publish an episode every day this year. So hit the subscribe button in your podcast app, and we'll be back in your feed tomorrow morning. All right, that's it for today. But until next time, my advice is to just focus on keeping your customers happy.